Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're diving into a really cool topic today.
Oh, yeah. This should be a good one.
It's all about building apps without needing to know how to code.
Really interesting stuff.
Yeah, so it's called low code, no code development,
Mm.
and we're basing this deep dive on a fascinating article from Devhooks called "The Rise of Low Code and No Code Platforms."
I think our listeners are going to find this one especially interesting.
Yeah, because who hasn't had an idea for an app?
Right.
But like most of us don't know how to code.
Exactly.
So we'll be talking about what these platforms are, how they're
Yeah.
changing the software development world, who's using them, what the future holds, all that good stuff.
It really is a game changer.
So before we go too far, can you give us a quick rundown of what exactly low-code and no-code platforms are?
Well, think of it like building with Legos.
Okay.
Instead of writing lines of code, you're visually piecing together pre-built elements, using templates, creating workflows.
So it's all very visual and drag and drop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all about making app development more accessible.
So that means someone with no coding experience could theoretically build a fully functional app.
Yep, that's the idea. And that's why this is so revolutionary.
Okay, I'm starting to see why this is such a big deal.
Because traditional software development, it's slow, it's expensive, it requires specialized expertise.
All things that a lot of people and businesses don't have.
Right, and these platforms, they offer a faster, more cost-effective alternative.
It's like democratizing software development, right?
Exactly. It's opening doors for people who maybe never thought they could build an app.
We keep hearing this term citizen developer.
Yeah.
What exactly does that mean in this context?
It essentially refers to anyone within an organization who uses these platforms to build apps and solutions, even if they don't have a formal coding background.
So it could be anyone from like a marketing manager to a healthcare professional.
Yep. Anyone with a problem to solve and a willingness to learn.
So we're seeing people from all walks of life building apps to streamline their work, improve processes, all sorts of things.
Pretty remarkable.
It really is. So it's not just about individuals building apps for themselves either.
Right.
These platforms can really change how teams work together.
For sure.
Like imagine a business team that can quickly prototype an idea,
Yeah.
get feedback, and iterate without having to rely on a separate IT department.
Exactly. It really bridges that gap between business and IT.
Okay, I'm sold on the concept, but I gotta ask, are there any downsides to using these platforms?
Of course, no technology is perfect.
Right.
One thing to consider is scalability.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
So if you're building a really complex application, like something that needs to handle massive amounts of data,
Like a social media platform or a complex financial system?
exactly, you might run into limitations with these platforms.
So for those kinds of large-scale projects, traditional coding might still be the best option.
It might be, yeah.
Gotcha. Are there any other limitations we should be aware of?
Another thing to think about is vendor lock-in.
Vendor lock-in?
Yeah, so when you build on a specific platform, you become reliant on their features updates and their way of doing things.
So switching to a different platform down the line could be tricky.
It could be. And sometimes you just can't avoid traditional coding altogether.
Like if you need a very specific feature that the platform doesn't offer.
Exactly. Or if you need a high level of customization.
So it sounds like it's all about choosing the right tool for the job.
Absolutely.
And speaking of tools, can you give us some examples of popular low-code and no-code platforms?
Sure. So on the low-code side, you've got platforms like OutSystems, Mendix.
Those names sound familiar.
They provide visual development environments and pre-built components, but you might still need some coding knowledge for more advanced stuff.
Okay, and what about no-code?
For true no-code platforms, you've got BubbleGlide Webflow.
These are for people who really don't want to touch any code at all.
Exactly. They're designed to be super user-friendly with drag-and-drop interfaces and intuitive workflows.
So there's a whole range of platforms out there, each with its own strengths and weaknesses.
Yep. It really depends on your specific needs and technical capabilities.
So it's important to do your research and choose a platform that aligns with what you're trying to build.
For sure. But the main takeaway here is that regardless of your coding experience, there's likely a platform out there that can help you bring your app idea to life.
That's pretty amazing.
It is. It's a really exciting time to be in the tech world.
I agree, and I'm really curious to see how this all plays out in the coming years.
Me too.
But let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll dive into the real-world impact of this low-code, no-code revolution.
That's good.
All right, so we're back, and we've talked about, like, what these platforms are, low code, no code,
Right.
why they're making such a big splash,
Yeah.
and even touched on some of those limitations like scalability and vendor lock-in.
Hmm.
But I really want to dig into like the real impact this is having,
Yeah.
especially for businesses.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the most significant things is this new agility businesses are experiencing. Yeah. You know how traditional app development can be this long, drawn-out process?
Oh yeah, for sure.
With these platforms, though, teams can prototype ideas super fast, get feedback, make changes on the fly.
So it's less like, trying to turn a giant ship
Uh-huh, yeah.
and more like zipping around in a speedboat
Exactly. And that speed and flexibility, that's huge in today's world.
where everything is moving so fast
Exactly. Businesses need to be able to adapt quickly, you know?
to stay ahead of the game.
Right. And it's not just about building things faster either.
It's about creating a culture of experimentation
Absolutely.
where you can try new things without being afraid to fail.
Yeah, it really breaks down those barriers between IT and other teams.
It's funny you mentioned that because I was reading about this small retail company
Okay.
that used no-code platform to build a tool for tracking customer feedback.
Interesting.
And it let them respond to issues so much quicker
That's great.
and like tailor their products and services based on, what customers were actually saying.
That's a perfect example of how even small businesses can gain a real edge.
It's giving them the power to do things they couldn't do before.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the good stuff,
Right.
but I think we need to address the big question that's probably on everyone's minds.
Oh, yeah.
Does this mean traditional software developers are,
Out of a job.
well, yeah, haha,
It's a question that comes up all the time.
understandably.
And look, it's true. These platforms automate a lot of tasks that developers used to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I see it more as like an evolution, not a replacement.
Okay, so instead of putting developers out of work, it's freeing them up to focus on more complex stuff.
Exactly. They can spend less time on those basic building blocks.
And more time on the things that really require their expertise.
Right, like integrating systems, ensuring security, optimizing performance, all that good stuff.
So it's like giving them a set of power tools
Yeah, good analogy.
that lets them build even better things.
Exactly.
This actually brings us back to the citizen developer. So if more people without coding experience are building apps, what does that mean for the whole software development world?
Well, I think we're going to see a lot more diversity.
Diversity.
Yeah, in terms of who's building software,
Oh, I see what you mean.
people with all sorts of backgrounds, bringing their unique perspectives.
Which could lead to some really innovative stuff.
Absolutely.
But are there any concerns about,
Quality.
yeah, like could we see a bunch of poorly designed or insecure apps flooding the market?
It's a valid concern, for sure.
So how do we make sure that doesn't happen?
Well, for one, the platforms themselves are getting better all the time.
At addressing those concerns.
Exactly. They're incorporating things like built-in security protocols and testing tools.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
And a lot of companies are putting guidelines in place for citizen developers,
To make sure things are done right.
right? Maybe pair them with experienced developers for guidance and support.
So it's about finding that balance between empowering people and maintaining quality and security.
For sure. And like with any new technology, it'll take some time to iron everything out.
There will be some bumps along the way.
Of course. But overall, I think this movement has huge potential for good.
It's making me think about education and the future of work.
Yeah.
Could we see a future where basic app development skills are just as common as knowing how to use a spreadsheet?
It's definitely possible. And that would change a lot of things.
How businesses operate, how we solve problems.
Even how we interact with technology in our daily lives.
Okay, I'm sensing a but coming.
Huh?
What are some potential downsides to this widespread adoption of low-code, no-code?
Well, one thing that worries some people is that the ease of building apps could lead to kind of an oversaturation.
Like too many apps that aren't really solving any real problems.
Exactly. Kind of like what happened with websites and mobile apps.
App clutter.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
So it really emphasizes the need for good design user experience.
Focusing on solving actual problems.
Right. Not just building apps for the sake of it.
This all ties back to the idea of responsible development.
Absolutely, regardless of who's doing the building.
And it highlights the need for education even for citizen developers.
Yeah.
Speaking of education, I'm curious about the role of traditional coding in all of this.
Yeah.
Will knowing how to code still be relevant in the future, or will these platforms make it obsolete?
It's a great question. And while these platforms are making app development more accessible,
I still get the feeling coding will be a valuable skill.
I think so too.
Yeah.
like knowing how a car engine works.
You may not need to be a mechanic to drive.
Right, but that understanding lets you troubleshoot problems, customize things.
It's like having a deeper level of control.
Exactly. So it's not about choosing one or the other.
Right. It's about recognizing the value of both.
Yeah, these platforms can empower people,
Mm.
but knowing how to code can take your skills to the next level.
It's like that extra layer of expertise.
For sure.
Okay, so all of this leads to another big question.
What's that?
What does this all mean for the future of work? Will these platforms create new jobs, or will they lead to people losing their jobs?
It's a tough question.
With no easy answers.
Right, on the one hand, these platforms could create tons of new opportunities.
Like in citizen development, platform management, integration.
Exactly. But there's also the concern that automation could displace some jobs.
It's a double-edged sword.
It is. But I think the key is adaptability. You know?
Being willing to learn new skills.
Exactly. The jobs of the future will need a mix of technical and soft skills.
And the ability to keep up with technology.
For sure.
You know, this has been such an insightful conversation.
It really has.
But there's still so much more to unpack.
Yeah.
So let's take a moment to gather our thoughts.
Oh, yeah.
And when we come back, we'll explore some of the broader implications of this low-code, no-code revolution.
Sounds good.
All right, so we're back. And, you know, we've covered a lot of ground with this low-code, no-code thing.
We have.
From, like, the basics to how it's affecting businesses and, you know, even the future of work.
It's a big topic.
It is. But before we wrap things up, I kind of want to shift gears a bit
Wow.
and talk about what all this means for you, you know, the listener.
Yeah, that's a great point. We've talked about the big picture stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But how can someone listening to this actually use these tools?
Right. Like, how can they take this information and do something meaningful with it?
Exactly. Maybe even solve a problem they've been struggling with.
Because I think we've all been there.
Oh, yeah.
Where you think, man, if only there was an app for that.
Right. And that's what's so cool about this whole thing.
It's making it possible.
Exactly. You don't need to be a coding genius anymore.
So, like, where do you even start if you're interested in this stuff?
Well, the good news is there are tons of resources.
Okay.
A lot of these platforms offer free trials.
Oh, that's cool.
So you can play around, get a feel for how they work.
See if it's for you.
Exactly. And there are tons of online tutorials.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
Communities, forums where you can connect with other people.
Share tips, get help.
Exactly. It's like this whole DIY community, but for app building.
I love that analogy.
And you don't need to be an expert to get started.
That's the best part.
These platforms are designed to be easy to use.
So what if you hit a roadblock?
You may get stuck.
Yeah, it can be kind of intimidating to learn something new.
I get that, but you don't have to do it alone.
Right. The communities are there to help.
Exactly. People are always willing to share their knowledge.
And if all else fails, there's always Google.
Uh-huh. Yep. You can find just about anything online these days.
So the information's out there.
The key is to be curious, experiment, and not be afraid to,
Mess up.
make mistakes. That's how you learn.
Exactly. And I think that's what's so cool about this movement.
What do you mean?
It's encouraging people to learn, be creative, and, take their ideas into their own hands.
I like that.
So for someone listening thinking, okay, this sounds cool, but what could I actually build? What are people making with these platforms?
Oh, man, all sorts of things. Give us some examples. People are building task management apps, business process automation tools,
Wow.
educational games platforms for connecting people.
So like pretty much anything you can think of.
Pretty much. It's all about using technology to solve problems, make things easier, create value.
It's like you said earlier, it's democratizing innovation.
Right. Anyone can do it now.
The tools are there, the resources are there. It's just a matter of taking that first step.
Exactly. And who knows, the next big tech breakthrough could come from someone who's never coded before.
That's an awesome thought.
It really is.
It's exciting to think about all the possibilities
Definitely, it's just the beginning.
as these platforms get even better.
Who knows what people will create.
Well, I think that's a great place to wrap up this deep dive.
It has been a great conversation.
It really has. We've learned about low code, no code, talked about the good and the bad, and hopefully inspired you to think about how you can use these tools to make your own ideas a reality.
Absolutely. The power is in your hands.
So go out there, explore, experiment, build something amazing.
Exactly.
And that's it for this deep dive into the world of low code. No code, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.